let's get started. Welcome to this session. I'm focusing on ArchiMate and using ArchiMate language to help you doing portfolio management. Before we dive into this detail, this is not a detailed course on ArchiMate, of course, but I will show you just a part of ArchiMate language and how that can support you in your activities among planning roadmaps and portfolio application portfolio management. So that's what I would like to address with you, and this session I will give a quick introduction to that. So let's first start with my whiteboard. I always prefer to use whiteboards to express specific things in architecture. Visualization makes things easier. So let's first check at what is application portfolio management, of course, about. What is that? Is that sorry? That application portfolio management. About. So what is that about? Basically focusing on a couple of things. Basically it is about all the activities that we do around applications as such. So basically we're talking about application development, but also of course application, I would say, integration, and also of course in the end the deployment. So basically the whole life cycle of applications and the way we manage that in an application landscape. So the integration together. And I not only focus on application, but I also focus on information, because information and application are very tied together, and therefore I would like to put that in scope of this as well. So that's two parts that are important among this facility. An application portfolio is really about how to manage, of course, this portfolio over time, and therefore, of course, it supports in the end. The portfolio is basically support your business needs, and that's a very broad definition because business needs in the end can only be met, of course, if you meet your strategic goals. So that's basically the focus, I would say, that I would like to put on application portfolio management, and which is all in scope of this activity. And basically, let's look a little bit more into what the drivers are on the portfolio management part, so that we can continue to look at what it all involves. So let's look a little bit on the application landscape. On the application landscape, we see a lot of things happening at the moment, of course. And so the application portfolio, I would say. And so basically all your applications together in that portfolio. How to manage that and how to make sure that you can all deliver, of course, that value. Basically, it's influenced by many drivers. I would I use this signal. I will later explain you why I use that signal. So that symbol. There's a lot of drivers actually that drive basically application portfolios nowadays. That means all the applications you have in your company. One of the most important drivers, of course, is purely your business need. Or in other words, demand. Which is really focusing on of course, basically applying new business logic or new functionalities to support your activities. So that means it's been driven by trends, by your business model. Maybe the changes that you make to your business model. Maybe there's a more customer-centric centric orientation. It could also be that that you have new technologies like Internet of Things, for instance, driving your demand. Yeah, that's purely coming from business and business demanding more application functionalities to meet the business model-specific functions. Another driver that you basically would have in your application portfolio landscape is that you need to manage what is called lifecycle management. So the lifecycle management of applications. Today, of course, we have vendors supporting applications, but they will of course be supported only for a limited amount of time. And when these applications, of course, fall out of support dates, you need to manage them to a different version to make sure that it all is still supported in the end. So that's an LCM driver. And basically, these two drive application portfolio management, and that also means that if you don't manage it yourself, it will be managed automatically by the push that comes from both areas, I would say. So that is some challenge we have. So the challenge basically that we are facing is basically to keep it manageable, to make sure that it is still very reliable application landscape that we offer. Yeah. And that's a challenge. Of course, we need to as an architecture team or as an architecture responsibility, we need to make sure that that we can all have that in focus and have that in control. And that's basically what we are focusing on here. So let's first look a little bit on maybe also the strategic setting of this portfolio management activity. So when we look at normal organizations moving from a strategic mindset, basically there's a strategic approach in the organization, to make sure that the business can of course not only on the short term but also long term achieve its goals, right? Then when we want to make changes to the existing business operating model, when we want to change the existing organization or application or process landscape, basically there's a change we need to manage. That change is normally being managed by what is called PMO, Project Management Office, or in other words, projects and portfolios. So this has nothing primarily to do with applications, but it's purely about executing projects. In the end, these projects end up in of course, an existing organization, which is called then operations. So the operations team, operations environment, operations management, better said. Operations management being responsible for the day-to-day operations of the organization. Yeah? So that's basically a change that is moved from a let's say change to an operation. And then we have an architecture capability to make sure that there is a strategic fit, but also that new influences, new drivers from, for instance, from the technology side, technology push, or new innovations on application, on the business model, can also be achieved, and that there's a mindset share between strategic people and also the architecture team. It translates it more into portfolio, into roadmaps of activities that we need to do, in order to make sure it fits, of course, the total strategic mindset. It also means that when you're talking about roadmaps, you're talking about, in the end, work packages and execution of activities. So there's a lot of share, of course, between PMO activities, which come sometimes purely from the organization point of view to meet the direct strategic goals, but also to make it fit with the roadmap programs that bring the value and make the changes on IT landscape, so both on applications and information. And of course, there's also a feedback loop and a linkage between the operations management people and, in the end, the enterprise architecture team. So this is actually the focus that we have also with portfolio management, is that we focus on these areas. when making an application change in reality. And of course, because there could be a new functionality coming in from a business side following this path, being implemented, being operated. It could also be that operations management finds out that an application has huge issues, or that some change needs to be done, which is maybe going this way, or maybe it follows part of enterprise activity, enterprise architecture activity. Anyway, we need to manage all these different changes. So that's the challenge what we have with the application landscape, especially since they're highly, of course, connected to each other, and therefore, of course, we need to put in some manageability. So let's look at now we're talking about manageability. Let's look at a couple of reasons why we need that manageability aspect. So why would we actually bother to manage it? So why manage this application landscape? Okay. Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that if you don't manage it, it will automatically become chaotic and complex. Yeah. So chaotic and complex. Another aspect, of course, is that there's better value to choose. Yeah. Let me explain that a little bit. If you have different landscapes and different applications, you can pick maybe the best applications for your landscape to make that value work for your business. Yeah? And that also makes it possible to make it more flexible. To move, for instance, from one application piece to another, or maybe move from one cloud solution to another. It also means that you have a better grip on your vendors. That means that the vendor management is better set up. Yeah, so vendor management, and I would say also sourcing strategies. Yeah, can better be leveraged using this. Sorry. Yeah, so basically that's all a mindset, all a way to work and to make sure that that we manage the portfolio well and that we have the most optimal value from it. Another aspect is also the rationalization, because now when we have an overview, basically we can manage that both application landscape plus I would say infrastructure landscape in a better way, right? In a better way to make more value and more and less complexity. So these are all reasons actually to make that application portfolio work for you and to manage it in a better way by a controlled, I would say, environment and a controlled way of doing it. And I would like to show you in ArchiMate, of course, how you can easily set that up and do that. So let's first look at a couple of definition aspects on enterprise architecture and portfolio management there. So basically, when we're talking about, there's two aspects actually to it. We spoke about the roadmap. Yeah. And the roadmap is really an enterprise architecture term about how basically transformations, how architecture transformations take place. Yeah. We also spoke about portfolio management, and that's really coming from the background of, I would say, PMO in the end, project management initiatives, where projects are actually also managed in a portfolio way. And that's also the way you could perceive, of course, application portfolio management. I prefer to combine these two, and I will show you in the demonstration that I will give on ArchiMate how to do that in a proper way. So let's quickly move to the roadmap of things. Yeah? So when you start planning activities there's many initiatives, of course, in your organization that change the application landscape. Of course, you want to start planning things, and you want to start mapping things out in time. And the roadmap is actually a way to do that. So by using a roadmap, basically you can make sure that each step that you take, each roadmap transition point, actually brings clear business value. Yeah. That also it's clear what kind of gaps you're trying to fill in the architecture landscape. That you take into account, for instance, lifecycle management activities and lifecycle management, I would say, stages. So that means is an application, for instance, at the moment, is that being is it a live application, is it an accepted application, or is it some that is deprecated in your landscape? That also means that you take considerations of your solution building blocks. Coming from solution building blocks is the term from TOGAF. You take into account, of course, the versions that you are basically deploying and that you want to deploy. You make sure that they are clearly numbered versions, that you know what is actually out there. Also in the roadmap, of course, you take clear considerations when it comes to resourcing. And of course, added to that also cost. It's clearly understood what type of work packages are below. So that means that it's clear what work packages are actually inside the roadmap to realize that business value, to realize that transition. Yeah. And also that you do an impact analysis. Yeah, so an impact analysis for an architecture change, an impact assessment. Because in the end we would like to know the readiness for that architecture change. So that's basically a way to organize that roadmap, and I would like to show you now in ArchiMate actually how that can be achieved. So quickly checking with you if there's any questions on your side that you have at the moment. If you have, please come forward and check before we go on. Okay. So let's move on. The next thing I would like to show you actually is basically ArchiMate modeling language. So ArchiMate is a visualization language for enterprise architecture. That means you can model architectures themselves. So I will show you at the end of this presentation an example of such an architecture. And it also makes it possible to model more than architecture elements only. Nowadays, with the extensions in ArchiMate, you can also model, I would say, project-oriented aspects. So that means talking about drivers, stakeholders, requirements, goals, but also the work packages and the plateaus or the transitions that we make. So that's very interesting. That way, actually, we can visualize and communicate such a transition in this way. So I would like to give an example of that. I suppose that I have a customer support manager, so I will start with that in mind. And so customer support is a role in this case, and is a stakeholder. Yeah, so customer support. Let me enlarge this a little bit for you to make it better readable. And customer support has basically a clear driver, and the driver is basically to keep, of course, your customers happy, right? And the goal for that is basically, that's a new goal that has been identified, is basically a self-service approach for the service we deliver, right? So that's a clear new that's a new goal coming from the business side, and we need to realize that. And the way we're going to realize actually that goal that has been identified during an ADM cycle, during an architecture work assessment, is that we need to implement a self-help capability, right? And by doing such a thing, basically, we find out that we first need to implement and modify our existing CRM app, which is running on SAP CRM version 3. Right, so that's a piece of work we need to do. And another piece of work we need to do is we need to set up and deploy a self-service portal. Some activity we need to do as well. And with this activity, basically, there's of course costs involved. I don't know how much, but it's something we need to investigate. There's business value, of course, that is brought to the table by executing this piece of work. And there's many more aspects, of course, that you can quantify, but basically this is something I would briefly would like to put in. So that's that, and basically we know that this whole piece of work is actually realizing that goal. So this is a way to visualize actually that piece of activity and the connection between that specific I would say sponsor in this case, but also the stakeholder, with a clear driver and with a clear goal in mind. And we know that by doing this activity, there is a piece of application that we're going to hit, which is called, in the end, we call this SAP. And it's of course something you need to put, and because I'm now making this model, of course, from scratch. But normally, of course, it comes from your application landscape, where this application, of course, is being used by, and basically is realized by the work package. So that's something you have to put in the modeling part. So this is a clear representation of all that part. Now let's quickly look at another stakeholder, because during that year or during that quarter, of course, you might have a different stakeholder. For instance, somebody from operations, management, and he or she also has a driver, and the driver there is to make sure that we support applications. Now we find out that we want to keep them, of course, running. So that means that we have a clear goal, and that means one of the goals we do have in that context is that we'd like to keep the applications supported. And by basically doing that, we have to make sure that we have to, of course, keep all the apps in place and also supported. So we identified during a lifecycle management study that one of the pieces we need to do, so lifecycle management, is that the document management system needs to be upgraded from version 12 to version 13. Right, that's something we need to do. It's a work package. And another one that we have is also the SAP. It's also an lifecycle management. Yeah, that's is actually done for SAP, because we have SAP version, so CRM version 3, and we need to upgrade that to, or basically we need to upgrade to version 5. Right? So these are two things that we need to do in some way in a work package, and of course that work package is again quantified by pieces of work, and with clear costs and clear timelines, etc. And what we do here actually is we have the clear identification also of the application that is hit by this change. So in this case, of course, it's the CRM application. Sorry, the SAP CRM application, which was on version 3. Which is now, of course, hit by this upgrade, or by this upgrade for SAP CRM. And therefore, of course, we have this direct relationship. Well, you can imagine that once you have all these relationships in place, it's easy to find out, of course, who's the owner, who's the initiator, what goal is it covering. Clearly, this is two totally different stakeholders with different IDs. And now, of course, the question comes: okay, how can we manage that with over time by putting a life cycle in, and a life cycle not only on an application part, but also on a complete transition, because we're planning in time. So what we can do in this scenario is basically we can move to what is called different plateaus. So we can move to different plateaus to organize this architecture change. So let's take some space here. So there's different plateaus. That means we might cover different time parts. So that means maybe this is Q4 2014. Yeah, so this is basically our current state architecture. And basically this could be, for instance, Q1 2015, which is then a state where we are, that we define as customer self-service ready. Yeah. So that's the state, and we know that between these plateaus, between these different architecture points in time, we have basically a gap, right? A gap that we need to fulfill. So that means we have a relationship to bridge here, and we have a relationship to bridge here. Basically, two steps to take to move from one level to the other level. Yeah. Then a new thing we in order to achieve that, we need to put in a work package to realize that that piece of work. Yeah, so we need to realize that piece of activity, and that piece of activity could be, of course, that we implement that self-help capability. Yeah? Self-help. What did we call it? Did we call it self-help? Yes, self-help. Self-help capability. Yeah. So that's actually the work package that we defined above, and these two actually basically that covers the three work packages that we identified already, which means we had the modified CRM app, yeah. And then the second one we have is of course the other one, which is so this is the modified CRM SAP app running on version 3. Yeah. And the next one we have is of course the portal we need to set up. So the portal activity for self-help. And these both are now part of this bigger work package, and basically these are delivering then the value, of course, to bridge the gap between one and the other state of the architecture. So that's basically, of course, delivering that that value. So let's quickly look at the overview of things. And so that's basically the idea. The idea is now further that we move, of course, into more details of the other package, because maybe we planned already an activity for that SAP upgrade there. So CRM version 3, version 5 upgrade. Sorry. Which is coming from the operations people, and these people, of course, would like to assign that package also. So therefore, of course, we might want to associate that with that gap as well, and that of course brings also the added value of that piece, and maybe you want to plan that in the same life cycle. So that means now there's of course a discussion between that piece, and you can mark that if you want in ArchiMate. Between that piece of work package and of course the existing and that new project for delivering that value for the customer self-help. So these both are now in a kind of conflict, or something needs to be organized for that. And of course the way that you can best find it, of course, is using your repository to find out what is there to do. So basically, you go into your repository and then you dive up the document, the different models for that you already defined with this component. So you could find that in that case because I already prepared it in some way. You can prepare that. Sorry, you can open that model then by using the proper view. So let's see what the model actually looks like. So if I open up a model which contains all the sub CRM apps in this case, I will get an overview actually of that piece of architecture and see how the complexity is actually inside there. So that means now I can easily drill down and drill up. And so I see that I have a business process here. That means here's my customer support now. That's the current environment there. So customer support, let me enlarge it a little bit for you. So customer support using that's a service that we deliver to our customers, as you can see, using a couple of channels. And basically, what we see here is that these, of course, is delivered by functions. There's processes in the business architecture. And when we go down and down, we find out that we see in the blue, green parts, we see the apps, application functions coming up. And below, of course, in the end, we'll find the SAP version 3 component, which is delivering all these parts. So now we have a clear identification of what is hit by this change. So they're using ArchiMate modeling, and let me show you the roadmap again. It is easy to identify these different architecture stages, and also to identify what is actually inside that transition that you are trying to achieve. Yeah, by showing what the gap is, and the gap is actually consisting, of course, of a couple of work packages, and inside, of course, you find the work packages for each component. So that's the way actually you can manage your portfolio of applications in a proper way. And you can do that in ArchiMate by showing the relationships, and easily, of course, find them back and see how they are planned in time, for instance. So this is showing that relationship. And that way, actually, you can go on and on and on. So this is you can plan it over each quarter or each month, depending on what your time frame is, and take both life cycle management, but also other activities like projects in account, and visualize that and have a clear mindset on the implication of things. So basically, that is the quick case on portfolio management when it comes to applications, and showing you a bit of roadmap work. I'm wondering if there are questions on your side that I would like to answer, of course. So if you have, please let me know. So any questions on that side? And if not, then I would like to pass back to Peter. Let me wait a couple of seconds to see if. Okay. So Peter, I would like to thank you all, and I will go back to who will. Oh, there's a question. Sorry, there's a question coming. So the question is, who will be looking at your drawings? The purpose actually of this, the stakeholders. That's the question, of course. Who are the stakeholders of this type of drawing? It's basically people responsible for the either application management, but also project management. Also people from PMO, planning, projects, of course, and architects, of course, because they will also of course come into part when they're looking at the impacts of the work being done in one project versus the other. So it's planning of activities. It could also be that it's done during the work of of planning of activities for the upcoming half year, depending on what how you do your budgeting, for instance, or how you do your lifecycle management activities. So basically, it's finding all the let's say the connections between both lifecycle management and business needs. So I don't know if that helps, if that answers your question, answers it. So there's different stakeholders, I would say, to use and to show that drawing to. Are there any other questions that I could answer? No. Okay, so then I would like to pass my role back to Peter.